So here's this plastic cast for the top plate of this violin that we're looking to repair its cracks and the distortion in the arching. One method of picking up that distortion is to use either a tight taut piece of string, straight edge or chain. I'm actually using a piece of horsehair here, and that just gives a shadow line on the arching of the instrument. And it's probably easiest to see up at these points on the edge here, just where I'm pointing at the edge here. You can see the way the shadow distorts as it goes around the edge. It does the same thing across the full length of the arching. So you can actually see here the arching is dropping away, and then the line sort of bumps up, and there's a hump just right here to about here. It actually doesn't completely get corrected until here. What I'll be doing is just removing some of the plaster in this area using a cabinet scraper and sandpaper to correct that arching. Now I can also actually feel the lumps and distortion in it, so I'll possibly be using my hands and eye as much as something like the shadow. But then when we get down here, there's more distortion here where the arch comes up, and then you've got this lump here. So this lump that we have here will need to be bored out, and this whole arching sort of shape needs to be made smooth like this side is. So I think I'll start this top one up here. We'll work our way down. You don't want to remove too much material. Just have to work our way down. It has distorted sort of both sides of the crack slightly. The top plate has collapsed in. The arching where it's supposed to arch over has actually collapsed into this crack area. So both sides of that crack actually on the inside are creating a sort of a hill, which is what I'm removing here. I'll take the crack apart, and when I put it back together, that means I can put it back together in the form and gluing back together in sort of perfect line with how it should be. And then if there's any need to further correct it, I can put some sandbags or wheat bags on the plate over a little bit of time, with maybe a little bit of steaming on the inside, just to help recorrect the arching. may look like I'm taking barely anything off here, but the plaster of Paris is quite soft, and obviously removing too much, it's very difficult to then add it back in. So it's really important to just take your time and make sure you get it right. Plates are much less likely to distort in these areas where the arching is a lot more, is steeper, though it can still do so if the crack has been put together, if any cracks or breaks in the plate have been put together really poorly. The top section of that's actually, I think I'm getting quite happy with that. So I'll leave that for now, and we'll start moving on the working on the bottom half. So now we've worked on this area here, we're now working on here. There's quite a distinct lump here. There's a line here where the crack comes all the way down to the F-hole. It's quite a distinct sort of change in the arch shape. It starts to flow in, and then it comes up over the top, and then it drops back into this sweeping curve as it comes in. So this whole area sort of from here to here needs to be adjusted where it's collapsed in around that crack. It's actually starting to look really good. Still a little bit of a lump just here. I'm really happy with it through this area already. I did take quite a bit off in that initial sort of scraping run, but I was quite confident with what I was doing and feeling and seeing. I'll have a see how it sits as well once I get the plates apart. I'll put them in and see how it all feels and looks, and a lot of it just comes down to experience as to how to judge when it's right. Let's do some final contouring with a piece of fine sandpaper. Just to smooth out the overall contours of the area, make sure I haven't left any unevenness from the cabinet scraper. There's just an area here where the crack is coming through that I have missed. Now when the top plate goes together and is both glued back in this form, and then after that, if there's any arching correction to be done to the actual plate, then that can be done on this, and we can be very confident that we're going to get it back to us as close to the original and correct arching, and that our join will go back together perfectly. I'll do any small final adjustments to that, and then look to start to clean the plate up and get the crack ready to the cracked halves of the top plate to ready to go back together in this. So I just wanted to show, here's this top plate. I haven't taken the crack apart yet, so you can see here there's quite a lip all the way along. There's a lip here as well, and when we press this side of the top plate down, it does just press into the mould area where I've removed. So that's how it was sitting up when the mould was done. It was sitting up with this lip, and when we press it down, just the area where the crack is apart, that actually, you can see that closes up, and then that's actually pulling up with perfectly flush. There's no lip in that area now. So that is what we're looking to achieve. So I'll now look to take the rest of these cracks apart, and the top one as well. So we'll loosen up all of this glue, soften it with some warm water, and loosen it all up, and get the two halves of the instrument apart, clean all the glue out really thoroughly, and then look to piece it back together in the mould and make sure that I'm happy with how it's all coming up. I'll come back to you probably with the top plate apart and ready to start putting it back together again. The next step in the repair of this top plate, here it is in two halves. But this shows just how useful the mould becomes. The one side obviously just drops in there, and when we put the two pieces together, it's far easier to get those to come together in such a way that this join will be perfect all the way through. It does look like there's evidence of the top being thinned at some point. I don't think the inside would have been finished in this way originally. With you can see sort of gouge marks and things in it. It doesn't line up with the rest of it. So I think the top's unfortunately been thinned at some point, which is a practice that some luthiers will believe to be important. However, I believe it gives an initial brightening of the sound in my experience, but then over time it doesn't last and often isn't great for the sound quality of the instrument. Hopefully this one hasn't been affected significantly by the thinning of the top plate. But yeah, you can see there just how useful this plaster is to be able to bring it back together and to be able to glue these cracks up and get them aligned perfectly with each other on such long cracks. It's very difficult. The next step is to glue with a really weak hide glue solution, a run of these little blocks all the way down the crack, either side, and then I will just use very gentle clamps. Actually use pegs, but you can use small screw clamps are often used. You don't want to put too much pressure on because you don't want to buckle this. You just want to use it it doesn't take much once it's aligned to pull that back in place. This piece will be clamped down to the plaster cast, which is why I've got it sitting up on blocks. Now you can actually screw some blocks into the base of the cast if you want, but I'm happy just to have it sitting there. I'll clamp the larger half of the top down to the plaster cast, and then this smaller section, half that's broken off, will then be able to just be gently held in place while it's gluing. That's really the purpose of these clamps, is to hold it in place. It's not to squash it together. You're not looking to crush the fibers together. It should just go back in place, and the glue will then do its job and form the bond to hold it together. So next thing is a fairly weak solution of hide glue, just to glue these blocks on all the way down. I've got about 36 of them sitting here, which I've pre-prepared. They don't have to be anything special, and then they'll be used to both make any slight adjustments if necessary. I really don't think it's going to be necessary, but if I need to put another clamp across the top to hold one side down or the other, I'll leave enough room in between these little blocks to do so. And then if there is need to push one point, a little pressure on one point, then a little bit of clamping pressure in a line with that will help hold it together. Glue pot, got just a fairly weak solution of hide glue here. We want a weak solution so that once we're finished with the blocks, they're easy to then just pop back off without damaging the inside of the surface of the top plate. They probably seem like they're really close together here, but it is actually necessary to get them as close together while allowing enough room for the clamps to do their job. seeing as this is a bit of a fiddly job, I'll just pause the video here after putting a few on and jump back to you at the end when I've got them all on. Last one in place. I'll be back with you in a moment. So there we have all the little blocks in place. We'll give those a good few hours to dry now, and then come back with you with the process of closing the crack and putting the two halves back together again. Okay, so this top plate is ready to go back together again. I have some glue prepared and ready to go. Fresh lot of glue. I've clamped the larger piece of the top plate down gently down to the mould. I've also put a layer of cling film or plastic wrap over the top of the mould. Now it's important to make sure it's fairly sort of tight so that it doesn't get pinched between the crack when we join it together. But that just prevents, if there's any glue sort of running out underneath, it prevents the top plate from getting glued to the mould in any way. So while we want to prevent any excess glue getting anywhere anyway, it's helpful and important. We've got all our little clamping blocks ready to go. I've also done a dry run of this and clamped it all up. So I'll be using these little pegs. They're just wooden pegs, and I've just adjusted the peg by cutting trimming off some of the inside ends of the peg so that they'll clamp over the top of these little blocks. And then because they're trying to pull the top plate, buckle it, which is what's obviously happened previously. I'm going to put this piece of it's just a piece of scrap wood over the top once I've got a couple of clamps on, and just clamp it down at each end. It won't stop it from pulling in, but it will stop it from buckling, and it will just hold it down flat to the mould, which is the mould's job to hold the arching in place while we're gluing it all. So we'll just get straight up onto it. I'll need to be fairly quick with this, and we'll run a little run of glue down the crack. This on one side of the join, and we'll just pop it in place here. And line up our ends. Just going to put a couple of clamps on just to start to pull it in while I hold it down, and we'll pop this piece over the top. And just a light amount of pressure for now, just because we don't want to actually sort of stop that plate from moving as the other pegs go in. And now we'll just start popping our clamps on, making sure that it all feels like it's lining up. And so here it's lifting off slightly, so I can just push it down to the into the mould and clamp it. If we need any more pressure on these clamps, you can actually put a rubber band around it, just to add a little pressure if we need it. Pretty much just pop these clamps all the way through. It's just enough of a gap here to feel what's going on, see what's going on. So this one here is still just wanting to lift up a little. So I'll pop a clamp over here to hold this area of the top plate down. And I might even get a rubber band and just a little bit more pressure on this centre peg. Just adding a peg on it might help. Okay, so I'll take care of those things. So here we have it all clamped in place. So we'll let that dry, take the clamps and everything off, and make sure that I'm happy with how it's all glued up. I'm very confident that I've got that pulled up really nicely, and that the mould will be doing its job, and all the points of the two surfaces feel really nice and flush and in alignment. So we'll let that do its job, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we're ready to take the clamps off this top plate and see how it all came together. Start off just by loosening some of these and taking these pegs off. I did put a few rubber bands on the ends of these pegs, and that just gives it a little bit more clamping power. Yeah, they feel really good. It feels perfectly all in alignment. Let's pop these clamps off, and if everything's done its job, that should stay settled nicely. Take these ones off. Yeah, that's just sitting nicely in form. It's not buckling or moving. And moment of truth. Flip it over. That's really good. You can still see the crack, obviously. There's a white line where it is, which is good because it's clean. So it enables us to retouch, but it's perfectly in alignment. So the F-holes, areas where the crack comes through to the F-hole, just flow through perfectly. The arching shape. So previously it was coming through here and then it was collapsing in, whereas you can now see the arching is continuing. The shape it looks very even across.